Next, I'd like to hear from Rich King.
Good morning, everyone. My approach this morning will be to talk about my perspective as a parent and as a coach, and how I kind of used an approach that was aimed at encouraging student athletes to avoid detrimental drug use and negative peer pressure. And so my experience as a parent, I'm the parent of equally proud parent of three fantastic adult human beings who I cannot preach their praise and how much I love and appreciate the people that they've become. Uh, my oldest son, he's a cinematographer and a businessman. My youngest son is an attorney, and my daughter, who's the youngest, is a professional soccer player. And so, with the nurturing of my children, one of the things that was critically important was basically to lay down a foundation of becoming overachievers, both academically and athletically. And it started first by identifying, early on their intellectual capacity and physical capacities to see the type of people that they would ultimately develop into. And so, we put in place things that constantly push them to learn, to want to learn, to be smarter, and to do the kinds of things to the best of their abilities at the time that they enjoyed. And all of them navigated towards sports, which I was happy to see. We exposed them to a lot of things, the arts, music, and sports was just something that they just really gravitated to. And I certainly appreciated that, because during my youthful years, that certainly was an instrumental part in allowing me to become an overachiever, if you will. So, with that, when they ultimately became of age, it was important to constantly reinforce the things that they should avoid, which, we're talking about marijuana here today. One of the things that I always encourage with them and all the student athletes I've coached is that anything that you burn and inhale into the body or just into the body has carcinogens that are going to be detrimental to you performing to your best, thinking your best, and really reaching full potential. And then, also encouraging them to do their own research, to determine, whether that information was accurate or not. And certainly, when we're talking about the student athletes that I coached, it was about making sure that everybody was academically at the top of their game at all times. And so the teams that I coached in the beginning years, it was necessary, and I made it mandatory that everybody be straight A students. And so that kind of culture developed within the team and within my kids too, to just always strive to reach excellence. And of course, kids will seek the path of least resistance, but it was important to always just kind of reinforce and encourage them to always believe in themselves and to always push forward to do better than what they did the day before. So with respect to the sports part of it, I kind of always used becoming one of the best in the area, one of the best in the state, one of the best in the country, and to always strive to achieve beyond what is capable you think that you're capable of doing. And in so doing, just kind of putting in training regiments and operational plans for them to follow, in order to kind of see incremental achievements along the way. And I think every time they recognized and saw an achievement that they've made, it kind of inspired and motivated them to kind of go for more. And so, if I could just kind of just stray away from that just for a second. So one of the things that I also wanted to kind of touch upon was having conversations with your children, specifically in how to engage law enforcement. I'm a law enforcement official, and so I always wanted to make sure that parents and children are on the same page with understanding the kinds of behaviors that are necessary when you engage law enforcement out in the public. We certainly know that our kids can be, you know, hyper to a degree when something when they encounter things that they don't necessarily like. But I think it's important to train them to understand that certain behavior patterns are necessary when certain engagements with people in the public uh, come their way. And so one of the things that I always did with my children was to basically role play. I would role play them being pulled over by a police officer and basically you know, explain to them how they needed to be polite and compliant with all the instructions that are provided to them in order for that engagement to be seamlessly smooth and and non-problematic. A lot of times I've encountered a lot of uh, young people who, who have certain mentalities created for whatever reason, that law enforcement is like the enemy. And I've certainly talked a lot of those young people off that ledge in order to recognize that there's a job behind law enforcement and that, they are there to help you. And so, I've convinced a lot of people to kind of behave in a way that is respectful and that is going to result in a positive encounter during those type of engagements. Now, just to kind of transition back a little bit, so with respect to my kids, I've kind of, and I'm talking about just not my own, but also student athletes I coached. I've always encouraged them to not only improve athletically, but also intellectually. And I would always encourage them to read certain books, self-improvement type books, and the kinds of things that would basically aid them with mental toughness and an understanding about how they need to be in order to navigate the competitive sports world they're in, and the things that they would ultimately encounter once they got into adulthood. And so, whether or not this is the appropriate form or not, a couple of books that I always encourage my student athletes to read was one called The Winning State, and that is a mental toughness book. Another one is a book entitled The 10X Rule, which is a fantastic book about setting goals 10 times higher than what you normally would have them at, and then to implement plans that are 10 times above what your initial plan would be in order to achieve the lowest level. Some of you may be familiar with these books. And so, I think to kind of keep student athletes engaged intellectually is one of the key elements for allowing them to kind of navigate through a lot of the peer pressure and things that can distract them away from reaching their full potential. I've always encouraged my kids and always constantly reminded them that they were blessed to be to have the lives that they have, and to always appreciate it, and care for their bodies, because that's the vessel by which they get to enjoy living life. That has always been a message I've tried to reinforce with all of the student athletes that I've encountered. And so, the thing about it with this as a parent and as a coach, there really isn't one specific answer to how to keep kids on a straight arrow in order to help them reach their full potential. There's various different ways and styles and methods of having impact on young people to do the right thing for themselves. And so, I just basically want to kind of just share a little bit of how I went about doing it in order to do it. So, like in the case of my kids, at times I did get some pushback. And so let me just give you an example. So with like my son, who's an attorney, very intelligent kid. And so I remember this one particular time, he's in middle school, and he comes home from school and he says, and I see every day, it's, do you have homework? What's the academic agenda today? Yeah, I have homework. It says, okay, where are your books? Oh, I left them in school, so no homework today. I said, oh, okay. I said, this is what we're doing. Jump in the car. School's, it's obviously after school hours, and we drive right up to the school, go right into the through the janitor to do the custodial entrance. I said, where's your locker? We go right to his locker. We get the homework, we bring it home. And I think, when I demonstrated to him that there is no path of least resistance here, there's only one way, and that is you reaching academic excellence. And I'm here to encourage you to do that. And we're not going to sidetrack that ever. And then so with my daughter, there was one incident where she had a teacher, and again in middle school, who she came home and complained about. She said, this teacher doesn't like me. I said, really? I said, I find it hard to believe, but I will explore it. I went and talked to the teacher, and the teacher, not only was she a teacher, but she was also a lawyer. And so, the first question was, what's my daughter's academic standing? Well, she's a 4.0 student. And I said, she's complaining. I said, you know what it is? She says, I'm encouraging her to do better than what she is. She's a 4.0 student, but she can be a 4.25 student. And so with that, I absolutely appreciated that approach, because it was my approach as well. And then I had the conversation with my daughter to recognize that there are going to be people in her life who are going to push her to be better than what she is. And so after that conversation, she kind of appreciated what that teacher was doing. And I think along the way, those kinds of educators were just absolutely invaluable with helping me kind of shape and guide my children to be overachievers, if you will, as they are today. And I don't want it to be misunderstood that parenting was easy. Parenting for me was the hardest and most challenging assignment I've ever had in my life. But at the same time, the most rewarding, because it allowed me to grow and to become a better person. And it certainly allowed for me to contribute to the betterment of my kids in order for their qualities of life to be what they are today. And so yeah, so that's my my speech today relevant, my commentary today relevant to the message for the program.
Wonderful. The power of parenting, Rich. Wow. And the seeds that you planted, now you're finally seeing the fruit of that. So awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that, Rich.